Hello and welcome back to my RC channel. I'm AndyRC and today I'm checking out the Hgltech Xjb-80 millimeter brushless micro. So yes, there's so many of these models coming out now. They are so popular as the technology just gets smaller and smaller, and what we may have here is potentially the most powerful bind and fly micro brushless quadcopter that has been released to date. That being said, this model caught me out a lot and I had to spend a frustratingly large amount of time trying to figure everything out, and I have done that. So if you want to buy this model, then hopefully this video will help you. But before I get onto the frustrations, let me talk about the specifications. So we have got these brushless motors here, and they are Hgltech branded, and they have got flame written on the side. They are purple, really nice colour scheme with this model, but I'll talk more about that a little bit later. The motors are a 1104 7500 kV motor. And we have got the 5-blade propellers on here, which seem to be the best props for these high kV motors at the moment, so that's a really good start. The ESC board is a 3S rated Betaflight S all-in-one ESC board that is using a JST connector. So yes, this is a 3S model. And then we have got a Pico BLX flight controller on here. So there's no on-screen display with this model, and I think that might put a lot of people off. However, don't let it put you off, because we have got a voltage buzzer on the back that is just as effective and probably draws less power as well. And we have also a LED board on the back that does have its DIN connected, if that's interesting for you. And then we have got the all-in-one camera here, and very similar to the TX03, so it's power switchable from 0 milliwatt to 25 to 50 to 200, and it's using the same method of a very long press. And then you've got 3 lines on the back of this display here. The first line is 25, second line is 50, and the third line is 200. And it starts off with a 0, so don't let that catch you out. So it starts off with no power. So it's a 40 channel VTX combo, so you have about a 1.8 second press, I think, to get into the 5 different bands. So yeah, 40 channel, and then a very short press to go through the 8 different bands on the camera. We have a cloverleaf antenna. It's a 4-lobe, very nice quality, but it's protected. And I will say the picture quality from this is very good as well. While on the subject of the camera, can you see there that the angle is non-adjustable and it's held in by all these bands? The only thing is that it does cover up the LED thing on the back there, and you can't see it, so you kind of have to push the camera forward if you're wanting to change your channels and things like that. Now, it comes flashed with Betaflight, however, it's completely not set up at all. In fact, the motor direction is not even set up correctly. So what I will say is, if you get this model, I would just flash the latest version of Betaflight. I believe it comes flashed with version 3.15, so if there's a later version than that now, I would just flash it, because you have to set up absolutely everything. So I will talk you through that. Now, they do tell you how to set up absolutely everything. I think this is really strange that they have built a quadcopter and it's not set up or flashed. I know that they have done that to try and save a little bit of money, but how do they truly know that all the solder joints are correct and that it powers up, etc., and you can fly it? They've given you this instruction manual here. See, you even have to switch on the LED strip, and you have to turn on the UART. You have to change the angle of the board, absolutely everything. But yeah, it also shows you here the channel frequency and everything as well. But yeah, I thought that was a bit of a pain, so I'll take you through the setup there. And so, shall we talk about the frustrations that I had with this? Well, actually, to start off with, there was absolutely no frustrations. I flew it out of the box like this, so I should talk about the receiver. So it comes in a bind and fly with a FrSky S-Bus receiver, and that is here. You can also get it in the FlySky receiver as well, and that is the 2A protocol, so you can use more of the FlySky transmitters with it. Or it comes in an ARF, so no DSM2, DSMX with this model. But if you buy it without a receiver, I'm sure you could add a DSM2, DSMX receiver on here. Also, a slight problem I had with the receiver is that this antenna comes out of the back there and it quite often dips into the props and you have to keep lifting that up. But, like I say, I set it all up like this, no problem, just the usual setup. And I flew absolutely fine, and I probably should have left the review there, but I thought, well, this model has got some ducts on it, and I wonder how it's going to fly without the ducts, and that's when the problems started. So, as I say, I flew it a couple of times, did a line of sight flight, did some FPV flying, and the first thing that I ran into is no thread lock has been used on any of these screws here, and you see this duct, or prop protector, I guess, not a duct. It's fairly rigid, but it still has a little bit of play in it, and you see on these screws here, these are long screws that go through this prop protector and then through the frame and into the motor. And because this isn't solid carbon, these become loose from the vibrations, and after 2 flights I had lost one of these screws, and of course there's only 2 screws holding this in, so it's not like some of the other models where they've used 2 screws for the prop protector then 2 screws for the motors. You've just got these 2 screws going through everything, so if you lose one screw then you are scuppered really, unless you've got some spare screws, because you don't want just one screw holding the motor in it. So if you get this model, I would use thread lock on these screws, and not only that, all of these screws came loose here as well, and the screws on the top, the prop screws didn't come loose, but on, I think it was the second flight, we have 2 screws here, and these screws have a nut on the other side, so they don't go into the flight controller or anything like that, and these 2 screws are keeping this camera module on. And like I say, a very tiny metal bolt under there, and by the second flight both of these screws had come out and this was loose. Luckily I had some spare screws, but they're tiny screws and you're not given any spare screws, and I think they should have done that, or at least use thread lock, because like I say, I was losing all the screws. So if you get this model, stick thread lock on all these screws, but that does mean you have to take it all apart. That's fine, I don't mind taking stuff apart, but if you do, then maybe this is not the model for you. So, another thing that I ran into is the battery strap. This is not the stock battery strap. The stock battery strap was tiny, and it was just one of those overlapping ones. This is one that goes through, so feeds through. And in flight, after, I think it was probably after about 7 flights, the Velcro had completely worn on the stock strap, and it was just coming apart. So, yeah, I bought one of these straps here. I actually get them from Picnic Quads because they don't seem to have the proper thin Velcro straps in Europe or UK. If you know about those, just let me know where to get them from, because I really struggle getting these and they have to come from America. So, yeah, had to replace the battery strap. Not a big deal. Right. Before I move on, let me just say the other stuff that you get in this package as well. No spare props, which is why the back 2 aren't the same colour as the front 2, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. One thing that you do get, and I really like this, is you get one of these. Now, this is a USB adapter. Now, one problem that we have with these quadcopters that have such small components is once the props are on, look at that, you cannot get to the USB port. So they have given this, which is really nice. It's still fiddly and it fits really tight, but that pushes in to your USB port there, and then you can put your a USB adapter on the top there, or your cable, sorry, should I say, and then that is a much better solution. However, I do have some slimmed down USB cables that do fit in there still, but it's really nice that they have thought about that and given that to you. I wish they would have given some spare props as well, but I guess they are working to a budget. The battery. The battery is a 3-cell, and it's quite a big battery. It's 550 milliamps. It is a 3S, as I say, and yeah, it's a JST connector, and I'm happy to say no brownouts with this model, probably because it doesn't have any telemetry on the RSSI, and also doesn't have an on-screen display. Now, you don't get any spare props, but something that happened to me is one of the props I was flying around, and just one of the blades just came off. And I think what it is these motors are such high kV that at full throttle they're actually just pinging off the blades from, I don't know, maybe the G-force or gravity or whatever. So it'd been nice to have some spare props, and that's only happened on me once, so maybe it was just a weakness in this prop, because I've flown this model a lot to get to grips with it. And yeah, it's not happened since, so I just stuck these spares on here, but no spare props, no spare screws. Bit of a shame. Right, weight. Let's talk about the weight. Actually, no, before I talk about that, let's talk about the prop protector, right? Because as I say, I was interested in seeing how it flew without the prop protector, but because you don't get given any spare screws, you cannot take the prop protector off and then use these long screws to screw the motors in, because they're too long. The motors just flop around and the screw touches the back of the motor, it all short out, it's no good. So what I did was I borrowed some really tiny screws from, I think it was the GT90, and took the prop protector off, and that worked fine. Now, this is the things that I learned from removing the prop protector. Right, the prop protector is quite rigid, and it does have part in the structure of the model, in that if you remove the prop protector, then the frame, it's not a thin frame by any means, but these motors are so powerful that a lot of vibration starts to happen. And that doesn't happen with the prop protector on, because, like I say, it's rigid. I think it's flexible, but it becomes part of the frame and makes the frame much stronger. So with these higher kV motors, with the prop protector removed, there's a lot more vibration that goes on. You can hear the vibration through the frame, and again, the screws start to come out, and the vibration is so much that in angle mode, the quadcopter will very quickly start to drift, much like it did with the Aurora 90. So you can only really use it in acro mode with the ducts removed, but that's fine by me, because I only fly acro outside anyways, and only fly angle indoors. But if that is important to you, to have angle mode with the ducts off, then it's going to drift. It does not drift with the ducts on. So really, I think this model is just designed to fly with the ducts on. And like I say, I should have left it there, but I was too intrigued how it would fly without the ducts, and I'll tell you, it's absolutely crazy. So now I've talked about that, let's talk about other batteries, because this battery is quite heavy. I think it's 47 grams. So I've actually been using these smaller batteries to get more punch. They are Nanotech 450 milliamp 3S batteries. Now the flight time is about 3:20 with these. Probably closer to 4 minutes with this, but I prefer the extra power that these give. So let's talk about some weights next. So I did write them down because there's quite a lot. So the quadcopter without a battery or protector weighs 64.8 grams, so fairly light. The protector on its own weighs 12.2 grams, which is fairly heavy, but not as heavy as some. So with the protector and no battery, so in this form, it weighs 77.1 grams. And then without the ducts, but with the stock battery, it weighs 112 grams, and then without the ducts and the Nanotech battery, it weighs 103 grams. So if you want to know any of the other figures, just plus and minus, take away some of the figures of the weights of the components there. But yeah, fairly lightweight model. loads of power, crazy high kV motors, but a lot of times it can catch you out with things. So I am going to need to use a transmitter. So the way that I've got it set up is just my usual. I have got it to ARM on this one, I've got my modes on this one here, and then I've got a loss model alarm on this one as well. And I need some goggles to FPV with it, so I'm using the Fat Shark, the Dominator HD3s with a diversity receiver, a Menace RC patch antenna, and a Triumph cloverleaf antenna with that as well. So here we are in the Betaflight configurator. You get this from the Chrome App Store. I've used the little attachment that they gave you to plug in the USB cable. So you can see there it says COM14 at the top, and I'm going to press connect. It might take just a few seconds to do so. So as I say, completely fresh version of Betaflight on here. Nothing's set up whatsoever, so I'll take you through the setup. I've enabled expert mode here, so that we can go into some of the other features. First thing you're going to want to do is go into the ports and turn on the serial RX for the UART3, that is for the receiver. And then we need to go into the configuration, and it's already set up as quad X as standard, but you can see you need a -45° on the yaw. And it's actually set up to 1-shot 125 out of the box, and there is a reason for that. That is because, and they explain this in the document actually, enabling D-shot 600 takes up one of these serial ports that allows the pass-through to be Hgltech. So, if you go and change it to D-shot 600 straight away, you can't change the motor direction, which is something that you need to do. However, they do give you the command to do that in the CLI if you want to just do that. However, I found it easier to just stay in 1-shot 125 and then change your motor direction and then select D-shot 600 afterwards. So that's something that caught me out. So I've changed it back to 1-shot 125 at the moment. So motor stop off for me, that's just my preference. Minimum throttle set at 1070. It's a little bit high actually. It probably could go down to about 1030. Of course, you can find your minimum throttle value in the motors tab once you have set the direction up and beat Hgltech, etc. And I'll explain that a little bit later. So that can probably sit at about 1040 because it was just hovering a little bit too high on 1070 for me there. Right, and then max throttle 2000, all fine. So this is the VBAT, and that does come through on the Pico BLX. So this is for your beeper. So the voltage scaling was fine. I turned the warning cell voltage down to 3.2. I think it's 3.5 out of the box. And then the minimum cell warning at 3, so that's 2 warnings there. I found this ample to get yourself flying back and landing. So this is the S-bus receiver, so I've selected serial based receiver and S-bus down here, and then all of this is just stock settings. Now if you want to use the LED strip, then you can tick this here and that'll turn that on. I'm not a big fan of LEDs. I think it's going to sap power from a micro, so I've kept it off, but if you want to do that, then you need to turn that on because it's not turned on out of the box. Of course, the failsafe is set to drop standard in Betaflight, so that's fine. PID tuning, I got a fairly decent tune. Now, this worked with the ducts on and off, so quite a low P gain there. And then the integral both at 42 and the D both at 22, I found that nice. I bumped up the Super 8 to 0.8 and everything else is fine there. So at the receiver it was set to AETR, and I've had to change that to TAR for the Tyrannus. So the receiver does not power up when it is just plugged in via USB, so I have to plug the battery in for that. And of course you've got a little button on the receiver as well to bind in D8 mode for me. So talking about the modes, I have set it to ARM on auxiliary 1, and then I've got angle in the first position, and then I have got acro in the next position, then acro and air in the last position, and I got my beeper down here as well. So The next thing that I would do before calibrating the ESCs, because that's something that you have to do, is now that I have changed it to One-Shot 125, we can get the Hgltech configurator and change the motor direction. So in order to do that, you need to disconnect from here and then plug in the battery. So I'm just gonna do that now. Make sure the props are off when you do this, and you can hear the beeper going off there. So I've got to turn on the Tyrannus as well, and then that should stop beeping. There we go. So now if we go into Hgltech Suite and then connect, and then come down here and press read setup, everything was set to normal, so I had to reverse motors 2 and 3 so they all go clockwise when they are soldered in straight. Now I can't guarantee that's going to be the case for every single one. I don't know if they've soldered every single motor straight, so you need to go into Betaflight and into the motors tab and check individually which direction the motors are turning there, but you can see it's Hgltech S 16.5 and I've reversed motors 2 and 3 there, and it won't let you do that if D-Shot is enabled. So if we disconnect from there and then go back into Betaflight and then connect to it and then go to the motors tab, so you then need to calibrate the ESCs. So the way that you would do that is unplug the battery with the props off, of course, then tick this here, put the master to full, plug the battery in, and you'll get the magic tones, and then drop this back down here and it will calibrate. One thing I should say though, mind, is I would go into the configuration and change this to D-Shot 600 before doing that, because I think it's a slightly different calibration for D-Shot. So I'm just going to unplug the battery there. And yeah, so I've done that, and then if you reconnect, and then you can do your ESC calibration. And then once you've done that, you can lift these sliders here individually and see when the motor starts to spin, and then that is where you can get your idle PWM value from as well. So if we go into the CLI and type in versions, so you can see the version I'm using. I don't know why I get this up the top, by the way. I don't know if it's an error. You can see there it's version 3.15 and it's Pico BLX as the target. Okay, let's go for a takeoff with this guy, starting off in angle mode. So I've actually attached the 450 milliamp battery so that it is comparable to the Pico X that I built. Let's check out the punch. That's pretty cool. Oh, it's windy again here today. Try that again. You can hear the beeper going off at the top of the throttle there. This is an old battery. It's an old nanotech battery. Oh, this thing is angry, listen at it. I think you could fly it indoors, but wow. It's going to be a noisy fella indoors if it's noisy outside. Let's try acro. I always get a little bit confused flying acro with these models that have got prop protectors. It messes up my orientation. So I'll keep it in close. Oh, it's flying nice. I like this. Not hearing any vibrations or anything like that. I just love these 5-blade props. Look at that. Locked in as well. Oh, this is fun. Very predictable. Yeah. Looking forward to flying this one FPV. Let's get it close to the camera. It's so noisy though. Listen at that. Wonder how high they're going to go in KV with these micros. I have far too much fun testing models like this. There goes the beeper again, but it's just this battery. Righto, let's go in for a landing and let's do some FPV with it. So it's like I was saying before really, that if you keep this model in its standard form and follow all the instructions and just fly it, it's fantastic. I think the picture quality is amazing, it flies amazing, it has plenty of power. It's not the most powerful brushless micro though, as you'll see here. That's full throttle over here, and it's not bad at all. But if you remember my Pico X video that I did, it's a very popular video, and I did that same maneuver over that tree that has become popular with these micros. It lifted up much quicker. However, you might want to check out the video to the end, because what I'm going to do is remove the prop protectors, do a line of sight flight of the model, and then an FPV flight with it without the protectors, and it's absolutely ballistic. But as I was talking about earlier, there is some vibration issues. You can see here now I throttle fully up and the camera is crystal clear. Alright, we have got the props in shot and the prop protectors, and we've also got some of the antenna protector in shot as well. So if that's not your thing, then maybe this isn't for you. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of things with this model that might not make it for you, but it was very frustrating trying to figure out all of the issues, the fact that there's loads of vibration and, you know, you have to set it all up and the screws coming loose. But I have to say, once I figured it all out, it was a joy to fly. I mean, it flew really well, really smooth. The only thing I will say is it is a noisy model. And one thing that is great about this as well, and in this flight I was using the 200 milliwatt setting on the camera, and I wish I'd have kept it to that because it didn't break up whatsoever. But when I removed the prop protectors and did that flight, I switched it down to 25 milliwatt and it broke up a lot more. But I think I was giving it a lot more beans in that flight because obviously I had more power. But yeah, the range of this is really good all the way around my field with very minimal breakup, and I'm able to do all of my favourite manoeuvres that I have been doing. That prop protector does turn green instantly as soon as you get it in the grass, and you can see I'm doing my constant loop manoeuvre there. That's something that I've been practicing, putting in little bits of throttle as you get to the bottom of the loop, and you can do the same with rolls as well. I've been practicing that a lot more, and that's been a lot of fun. So you get a 3-minute flight time even with that 200 milliwatt VTX. Let's get and do the line of sight flight with the prop protectors removed. Okay, let's try with the protectors off. Oh, that is nuts. It's got to be hovering at 10% throttle. That's crazy. Quite nerve-wracking when it disappears out of sight for a brief second until my eye catches up with it. Yeah, this one's insane. Those motors, they sound like a budgie that's having electric shock treatment or something. Do I dare acro? Oh yeah, docile. Not really. Oh, I can barely see this thing. It's so tiny. Listen at that thing chirp. I'm losing orientation. Oh, it was right in front of me. Let's go in for a landing. I'm not sure the nerves can take much more of that. So I will warn you, this flight is absolutely insane, because this model has got a huge amount of power, but you'll notice there, as soon as I'm on the throttle, I'm all of a sudden getting vibrations through to the camera, and that is the case when it comes through to the gyro or accelerometer when in angle mode. Only after just like a few seconds in angle mode, the quadcopter starts to drift because of the vibrations. And also, because the model doesn't have a Loctite, the screws come out even quicker with that vibration, but you can see there the amount of power that it's got now compared to the ducts. Alright, the ducts were 12 grams, but these models are so small, 12 grams is a lot to them, and there is so much more punch and power when you remove it. But like I say, it does seem like the prop protectors are part of the construction of the model, and they do help with vibrations. Now, in the previous FPV flight I did with the propeller protectors on, I accidentally put the transmitter on 200 milliwatt and the picture was good. It's on 25 milliwatt this time, but for some reason with this particular flight I was getting a huge amount of breakup, and I think it might be because I was on my about 7 consecutive flight, and I think the VTX may have been getting a little bit too hot, and when that happens they can reduce the power there. So yeah, it does get hot, this one, so I'd probably say have it cool down before you fly it next. But just look at that height that I managed to get on. Yeah, so what I'll do is I did loads of flights with this model, and I managed to catch a flight with the 25 milliwatt camera going and the picture being fine, almost as good as the 200 milliwatt. You know, I'm not flying out to huge distances here. One thing I did notice though, and it's pretty difficult to see, but in where the right prop is there, as I do some more loops, there is a little bit of dust or dirt on the center of the camera. I tend to find that happens a lot with these bind and flies. Now I guess we're using very cheap components here, but yeah, often a little bit of dirt gets on that sensor when they're putting the lens in, and you get an annoying little spot in the picture when you're flying FPV. But luckily this one's down at the corner. But yeah, that's something that I've had with all models, and I've had it with cameras as well. So you know, you're not always guaranteed that even if you spend decent money that you're not going to get something like that, but it wasn't too much of a problem. So yeah, I think my conclusion of this model is it's good, but it is a lot of work. So hopefully if you find the things in my video helpful, then just let me know in the comments, because yeah, I spent 2 days in total making this video. So there you go, that is my review of the Hgltech Xjb-80. I'll put a link in the description if you wish to get one. As always, thanks so much for watching. Please continue to subscribe. Cheers.